Hello and welcome to another episode of the Nordic Office Hours. I'm Marcia Villalba, and today we are going to answer all the questions related to anything that I know the answer, that is mostly serverless. And we have a guest with us today that is Ulf Zakariatsson, or however you pronounce his name. I'm really bad with Swedish. He's a senior go-to-market specialist in storage. So today, if you have questions related to any of the storage services that AWS provide, like S3, my favorite service in the world, or EFS, or something like that, and also data lakes, he can help you out. So please ask your questions, and I will let Ulf introduce himself. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit what you do in AWS?
Yeah, I can for sure do that. I'm a storage go-to-market specialist. It's well, I wouldn't say it's a fancy title, but it's I'm handling more or less everything storage related in the Nordics for AWS. That's
okay. Awesome. And yeah, before getting some questions, I want to talk a little bit about all the events that are coming out, because we have quite a bunch. So get your screenshot tool ready, because I will be sharing some links. The first one, if you are getting started with AWS, we have a series of webinars starting from the 29th of, well, they should be already ongoing until, well, today it's 28th, so it starts tomorrow. I'm really confused. From the 29th until the 8th of October is the Getting Started series, and there we have a webinar, many webinars, on topics like getting started with AWS, getting started with, I don't know, containers, serverless. Do you know if there is some storage talks there?
Absolutely. There's actually the webinar series, it's 5 events or webinars. And the first one is actually called How to Deploy Your File Workloads Quickly and Easily with AWS. So that's for sure a storage-related topic, and that's tomorrow, actually, on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, it starts on the 29th, and 29th is tomorrow. So you can go and register. The link is in the screen. So take a screenshot, and I will paste the link also in the chat room, so you can all get it.
And then there's actually another storage topic,
yes.
And that's the last one in the series. It's called How to Become More Data-Driven with a Data Lake on AWS. And
awesome.
Actually,
so
it's
two of them.
Yeah, it's actually myself and a colleague of mine, Fleming Bagger, who actually presents that one. That's October 8th.
Good. So you have tomorrow and October 8th, and then you have many in the middle that you can ask questions, and I imagine there will be live QA as well. So if you have more questions, you can get the answers there. Then we have another event about storage, about many things, I imagine, that is the Data Modernization Week. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The storage or the Data Modernization Week. It's a week full of actually not only storage content. It's like storage, it's database, and it's also analytics, and actually a little bit of AI ML as well. So it goes from Monday next week, October the 5th, till Friday, October the 9th. And you have actually 6, if we talk specifically about storage, there's actually 6 specific sessions that you can attend. And on top of that, there's actually a possibility to join a couple of workshops as well, if you want to have your hands dirty, so to say. And the workshops are migrating data to AWS, securing data in Amazon S3, and manage file services with Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. And and I guess we posted the link to the web landing page so you can...
Yeah, I put it in the screen so people can take a screenshot, and I also put it in the chat so people can take the screenshot. So if you have questions, Arita, just put them in the chat. We will start picking the questions as soon as we have a couple, and then we start answering. So go for it, start shooting. And the last event I want to mention is the Dev Day we are having on the 15th of October. And that's a free track event that we are having online. So it's a full day event with 5 talks, I think, per track, where we are going to cover the IT manager track. Then we have the developer track and the architect track. And those talks are like 300, 400 level. That means that are quite advanced. So if you're an advanced user of AWS, you can go and register to that event. For example, I'm going to present there the CI/CD for serverless applications. And then at the end of all the talks, we will have some time for Q&A. So you can come also and ask questions. So again, take a screenshot and register. All these events are free, and they are available for you to participate. So we have some questions already, so let's get started. So the first question is from Codes Tech, and he asked, AWS have storage. Oh, so they're asking what Google and Azure has like S3. You should go and ask them.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, we can talk about S3 for hours, but so Codes, if you have any question about AWS or the cloud in general, ask us, but not about other cloud providers. We don't know them, and we cannot answer questions related to that. So let's see. Oh, a second question from Codes. What other storage service there are in AWS beside S3?
Well, that could be a really long answer, but I'll try to limit it a little bit. But S3 obviously it's object storage, and it's the natural choice if you have like cloud-born application or digital native initiatives or things like that. But if you look at the normal enterprise or an old legacy type of enterprise, they have a lot of block storage. So that's a different type of storage. Normally, it's used if you have like ERP systems like SAP or databases or things like that. And so we have a lot we have a block storage service called EBS that is widely used, very much used, and it's actually the foundation for a lot of other services we have at AWS. So block storage we have. And we also have what's become much more popular lately is actually we have several file services, and we have had for quite a long time EFS, that is for like Linux NFS type of workloads. So that's been around for a while, and that's actually quite widely used. What we introduced like a year and a half ago was a service called FSx for Windows File Server, which is perfect if you have like Windows user shares or things like that. So that is also a service we have. And then we have also a service for HPC type of workloads where you require a really, really good throughput and low latency. Like it's very popular in like cases like autonomous drive and things like that. And that's a service called FSx for Lustre.
What is HPC? Our audience
high performance computing. That is, but that service is perfect for that FSx for Lustre. And then we have also a backup service that actually can handle backups for not only like AWS cloud native services. It also can handle actually on-premises type of backup challenges. On top of that, I should really point out that we have a lot of good partners in the ISV space, like backup and disaster recovery partners. You probably have heard of names like Commvault, Veritas, Veeam, and those guys, and they have super good, so to say, super good integrations built into AWS. So that is also a choice if you're looking into the backup space. What we have on top of it, it's like, well, we have a lot of services, but a very common question is, how do we get the data into AWS Cloud? So we have a lot of solutions for getting the bacon into the cloud, so to say. And the service that's been around for the longest period of time in that area is actually AWS Snowball. And Snowball is a family of rugged devices that if you want to transport the data in to AWS in a non-online fashion, then you can actually order a Snowball. You will get a rugged device sent to your where you want to have it, and then you can load the data into it and then send it back to AWS, and AWS will load it into your S3 bucket if that's where you want it to land.
How many teras there is in Snowball?
A Snowball is suitable for like up to 80 terabyte usable, and then you can use so to say many Snowballs if you want, if you have a requirement for more.
Do we have Snowmobile in Europe?
We have actually, if you have a case where you need to transfer very large amount of data into AWS, we are then talking about many petabytes. Then we can actually, it's a truck full of storage devices that we can, so to say, drive up to your data center or wherever it is, and then you can load the data into it, and we will transport it to an AWS region.
And is Snowcon also part of this type of service?
Absolutely. The Snow family actually consists of with the two ones we've already mentioned. Snowball, it's actually called Snowball Edge. Then there's also the Snowmobile, the large one, the Beast. And then we have a small brother in the family called Snowcone, which will soon be available in Europe regions. It actually has a capacity of 8 terabytes. It has Wi-Fi connection. It has a lot of interesting features, but that's to be used actually for if you have a demand for smaller, so to say, data ingest volumes. And then we have, so that was if you want to transport the data into AWS in a, so to say, batch or non-online fashion. If you have the possibility, if you have a network infrastructure that is okay, then we have a very interesting service called Data Sync that can bring in the data to AWS. So we have, to summarize it, we have file services, we have block services, and then of course we have the workhorse in the family S3, object storage. And then we have backup services, and we have services to transport the data in and actually also out of AWS Cloud, if that would be a requirement.
Wow, that's a lot of services. As always, AWS has a lot of variety and things to suit everybody's needs.
Yeah. So one thing I almost forgot, we have like also FTP-oriented type of services as well, SFTP and things like that.
Somebody says that the Snowball track is their favorite, Alex Marsha.
It is.
I totally agree. It blew my mind, the reinvent when they load the track in the stage. I was like, wow.
Yeah, was it like 2 years ago or 3 years?
Yeah, I think 3 years ago, but it was just crazy. But I have to say that before that, there was not really big things. Like I think a couple of years ago, the AWS launched Ground Station, and there it was like, what? Satellite management. So every year they outdo with their weird services and that. So I'm very excited to see what they launched this year.
Yeah, I'm too, actually. Since ground station, of course, there will be a lot of storage involved in cases. And we have several cases here in the Nordic, so it's actually a very...
Using ground station?
Well, there's a lot of companies working in that field in the Nordics.
Actually. Wow, that's so interesting to know. I didn't know that there were customers using that. So that's pretty cool. So we have another question about what is, we'll put it in the screen. What is the difference between AWS S3, Data Lake, and Glacier?
Well, let me put it this way. A data lake, it's a data repository, actually, where you can store more or less all type of data you have, like structural data, non-structured data. It can be relational data. It can be everything. It can be like streaming data from IoT devices and things like that. So AWS, or data lake, it's a concept of how you, so to say, can store your data in a way so you don't have a lot of silos. So it's a lake with data. S3 and Glacier, they are perfect storage services to use if you want to build a data lake. So the storage component in the data lake is actually AWS or Amazon S3 and Amazon S3 Glacier. And on top of that, of course, a data lake solution, it's not only storage. You then, on top of it, need to have analytic capabilities. And probably, which is extremely popular now, it's to have AI and ML capabilities on top of it. That's the outcome that you want to, so to say, have from the data lake. So the data lake, it's a concept of how to, so to say, not only store, actually to ingest the data as well, and how you can store it in an efficient and very cost-effective way with S3 and Glacier. So and Glacier and S3, it's actually the storage services used to build the data lake. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how I thought actually to try to explain.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer for the questions. There are 3 different things. Well, S3 and Glacier, kind of, but they all belong together, but they're quite distinct things. There is a question that somebody's asking. I don't know if we can answer this type of question because at least he's saying that he's using Jenkins on premise. So let's start from the beginning. I'm implementing a CI/CD using Jenkins as on-premise tool to publish code to S3, and then use code deploy to send to S3, EC2, and trying to send to EC2 production. So he's maybe building a pipeline. And the question is, can I change the directory location to where my S3 artifacts will be stored in EC2, and how and where to mention that using code deployed services? So this is very specific question, and you're using some on-premises tools. At least what I can tell you, I don't know if you know the answer for this, Ulf.
No, I think that's a question for you, I guess.
Well, I don't think so, but because this has a lot of virtual machines and I don't touch those. But I've been using a lot these code services, and I don't use much Jenkins for quite a long since I discovered all the code suite. But in all the code services, by default, when you're doing something, everything goes. For example, you were talking in some of the questions, having multiple AppSec files and things like that. There is some configuration. For example, if you're using code build, you can define where your spec is, in which part of your project. If you're using code build, you can specify quite a lot of things. So, but I don't know how your Jenkins is created. If you're using code pipeline, definitely you can define it with code pipeline, then use code build and specify where, in which part of your S3 the artifact will be stored, and then you can use the same code pipeline to deploy to the different EC2 in production and in staging, and that's very easy to do with code pipeline. But as you're using Jenkins, I can really not tell you because that's something external and I don't know how to do it, but I can put you some example. I have the example with code pipeline and with code build, code deploy, and everything, but for Lambda functions, but it should be more or less the same for EC2. I will put it in the chat for you, so maybe that helps. I don't know if you know the answer for this or if you can tell us, but Codes is asking, can you tell us how AWS manage data to store data in storage, for example, S3? How it works across the servers, how it works across the location, and I don't know what you can share, because I imagine there is a lot of things that are not shareable. But
absolutely. First of all, it's a when you, I think that goes for all, more or less everything you consume from AWS. It's a service. You don't actually consume a lot of components underlying and so forth. So it's a service, and in the case of S3, it's a managed service. So we don't really reveal how so to say the services are built up. But I think what is a little bit in that question, it's the concept we have, and that's the concept we have with the infrastructure generally at AWS, that we are building up we have the concept of a region that has several availability zones, and an availability zone consists of several data centers. So it's everything. If we talk specifically about storage, you can rest assured that we are using a lot of replication techniques, and there's actually several copies of the data, so we can actually withstand even a failure of an availability zone. And with S3, the durability, we say it's 11 nines of durability. So it's extremely, so to say, safe. If you store 10 million objects for 10,000 years, you risk to lose one object. That equals to 11 nines of durability. So to summarize it, with S3, with the exception, we actually have one service in S3 called One Zone Infrequent Access that actually only stores data in one availability zone. Even though that means several data centers in our case, it's not, so to say, it's only the data is only residing in one availability zone. But for all other S3 services, the data resides in minimum 3 availability zones. And an availability zone, it's actually, there's always synchronous distance between the availability zones, but it's like if you talk about kilometers, it can be like 50, 60, 70 kilometers in between them. They are also like on separate power grids and on separate flood plains as well. So they are, and the network and connectivity between them are of course redundant. So there's a lot or I would say that all security measurements, more or less, you can think of are more or less built into how we store the data for you.
Cool. I have an interesting question. Is there a rule of thumb when to use Redshift Spectrum versus Athena on data in S3? Do you know the answer?
Not really, but obviously the person who asked that question knows that they are like serverless, so to say, query services, both of them. Well, obviously, if you have already Redshift, our cloud data warehouse, then you can, of course, tend to think that Redshift Spectrum could be an alternative.
What is Redshift Spectrum? Can you explain for the persons that don't know it?
Redshift, that's our cloud data warehouse service. So Redshift is a data warehouse that can handle a lot of volume. It has super good performance. It's a data warehouse, so to say. Redshift Spectrum is actually a serverless query service where you can actually query the data in not only but in Redshift without having to set up a server infrastructure to so to say for the compute capacity you need and things like that. We handle it for you in the Redshift Spectrum service. Athena, it's actually a similar concept. It's also a serverless query service where you don't need to first set up a lot of servers and things like that in order to do your queries. But I'm not that detailed technically into those two services to answer it really, but they are two serverless query, so to say, services we have. I don't know, Marcia, if you have a better explanation.
No, because I'm not a data analytics person, so I cannot help you with that. But if you have any questions or things like that, you can always ping me on Twitter, and I can redirect the questions to the right persons if we don't get to answer today. And if it's something serverless, I'm happy to answer them. But if it's something like this, for example, I can throw it to some of our essays and they might come back with an answer. I have another question related to storage. Let's see here. S3 is used as a data repository for data lake, which can hold relational data like mentioned. But can it be used to achieve updates like in relational database like Oracle or SQL Server?
Can it be used to achieve updates like a relational data lake? Well, S3 it's a different, so to say, animal compared to relational databases, and they serve two different, so to say, use cases. And I would say the reason why, they are not mutually, so to say, excluding. So you probably, if you build a data lake, you still would need to have a relational database for some parts. So it's not that you only, so to say, use in a data lake or in a lake house, which we call it when you have a data warehouse like our Redshift, and then you have the data lake. So it's not that you can build a solution only on S3. You need to have complementary services, but S3, it's perfect to hold the data that you then can, so to say, transport or move into a service like a relational database or or a data warehouse. It can also be like that you, if that's the maybe a little bit in the question as well, normally you also have relational databases that you want to ingest data from into the data lake. And that is, of course, perfectly doable. What we also, of course, have in the data lake, it's not only like to store the data. You need to have some sort of ETL mechanism, extract, transfer, and load, where you normally, first of all, you need to refine the data. You need probably to recalculate things, and you want to probably have it in formats like ORC or Parquet. And then you need also to have a data catalog, because if you ingest data into the data lake and you don't really know what you have in the data lake, like if you have extract from a relational database, and you have probably like streaming data from IoT devices, you really need to keep track of what data you have. And that you need to have a good data catalog. We have a solution called AWS Glue that is perfect for that. And then the consumers of the data, the ones who will use it, have a more easy task to find the right data, and so to say, if you have a data catalog. But it's S3, it's not a relational database. So if you have requirements like where a relational database is the perfect tool, then well, you probably will use that. And we have, like, I think we have 15 purpose-built databases at AWS.
So and 8 engines for different relational database. So you can have Oracle and SQL Server are inside the RDS offering. So if you need those, you can always use those.
Yeah. So I hope that answered the question. S3, it's good at many things, but S3 doesn't mean that you don't need anything like relational databases or key value stores or things like that. But as the, so to say, data repository.
But I think it's a good exercise for people to try to think if they can use the simplest things, because S3 is great. It's really distributed very well in the edge. So you can have very fast applications, and maybe you don't need a really full-on database. There was this exercise that, I don't know if you know, Martin, Uncle Bob, he's a famous writer for programmers, and in his book or in one of his blog posts, I don't remember, he was telling that when he was designing the service, he started to design the service strictly as the requirements needed, without any over-engineering it. And the first thing, they started doing Agile, so it was little by little the design. And the first thing they asked for doing something, he was using files to store the information, like because the requirements didn't really needed a relational database. This is quite old, so there was no other database in use. And by the end of the whole experiment, he still had files, and he was able to have his whole system done only with file management, because he could really take advantage of storing things in files and needed the database. I think it's a good exercise, because if you use S3, you gain a lot of robustness and flexibility and scalability and performance. So if you can really take your application to the to the extreme of not needing a database, why not? I think it's a good exercise, but it doesn't have all the features of a relational database.
No, and you know, if you need commits and locks and things like that.
Yeah.
But you can, of course, build. That's what you probably meant.
Yeah, and S3 also, for example, has a lot of functionalities that are great, like the event-driven facilities, that every time something happens, an event is triggered. So you can really have an audit log and have all kind of really built-in security things in place. But it's not a relational database. they're not the same thing, but you can really do quite a lot of things if you put your mind around it.
Absolutely.
There is an interesting question here. I really don't know the answer. I don't know if you know the answer, but if you know, I will be very interested because it's something I ask myself all the time. Follow on the concepts that you were talking a little bit before about regions, availability zones, why S3 buckets are global and other services are local to a region. That's a great question.
It is. I guess it has to do one way. One obvious thing, of course, is that data has persistency. So it's really if you lose the data, then so to say, it's gone.
Yeah, but I think what he's mentioning here, at least is how I understand the question, is about the service. So, for example, when you get inside S3, you see all the buckets for all your regions in one place. And then when you create a bucket, the bucket name needs to be unique all around the globe, even if though is your bucket is kind of stored in that region that you say that it will be. And the URL of the bucket will have the region at the beginning. So it's kind of unique. That's just a curiosity thing. I think Cardinal GT has the same question that I do, because every time I open the S3 console, it's like, why all my buckets are here? I was just want the ones from my region. And you see on the top, when you open the console, it says global. It's just a curiosity question. If you know the answer, I will be happy.
not really,
okay.
To be honest. But of course, different services have different requirements, but S3 has it's a global service, and it's it's an interesting question. Actually,
yeah, it's something every time I ask myself the same thing. But let's say that S3 is one of the oldest services that AWS has. So I don't know what is behind the mindset when they designed that, but it's like that. Yeah, I will check if there is some other serverless questions in the queue, because I was pushing all the storage questions. There is some questions about time series data. Do you might have an answer for that? What do you consider to be the best choice for time series data? Volume less than 1 billion rows a year. Well, we have the new time series database coming out soon. So maybe that's the perfect solution for you. I don't know if you know a better answer.
Oh, I think that's a good answer.
Yeah, I will put the link in the chat. It's now in preview, the time series, but it's something you can request the access to the preview, and then you will get it access, and you can try it out, and you can give us feedback on how you feel about it. So there is the link in the chat and also in the screen. And that's a database made for time series data, no matter how much data you have, because it's a fully managed service, so you pay for how much you use. And it takes all the pain of managing time ranges and all kind of things. So definitely look at it. I think it maybe solves the problem for you. Let's see. Somebody had a question, and I was about to click on that. Here. Don Fred has this question. For example, well, he might have a beginning question somewhere, and I didn't click. Here. How can I retrieve data from AWS to a custom dashboard made by React.js? So if you are using any AWS service, you can always either export it somewhere. For example, if you want some CloudWatch information, you can always export your CloudWatch to S3 buckets, and from there you can consume it. You can export it to Kibana if you want as well. And I'm pretty sure there's many ways to export the data out if you're using CloudWatch. If you have application data, you can send it wherever you want. if you're using serverless, just be careful not to block your execution. But there is many libraries out there that help you to, if you're using some third-party dashboard that will give you an API that you can basically send all your metrics and it will be exported out. So definitely there is many ways to get data either from CloudWatch into something else or directly from your code into something else. So look for APIs or then look for the CloudWatch export tools. Let's see. I think we have answered most of the questions from the top. Okay. So while we wait for a little bit of questions, we can talk a little bit about what is the most easy path to get started with data lakes in AWS. Can you share a little bit of what is your experience and what you would recommend?
There's actually, I think we have a resource that is probably a little bit too less utilized, actually. And we have a thing called Quickstarts that which is actually ready or patterns with actually if you have a requirement for something, I urge you to look at Quickstarts because there's a lot of things that we have, so to say, rubber stamped that are, so to say, built with the best practices and things like that. And there's actually two Quickstarts relating to, there's a lot more, but there's two specific Quickstarts that are related to, so to say, building a data lake with AWS services. One is it's like a demo where you can, so to say, see how it's built up, what services it's used, but you can't actually change it or you can't put it in production. Then there's a second one that you can actually manipulate and tailor-made to your specific requirements. So that's really two good examples of a way to get a quick start. The third thing I would say is that we have a service called Lake Formation, which is actually a service that is built on top of other existing services like S3, AWS Glue, which is the ETL and data catalog service. It's using other AWS services, and we have stitched together a workflow that makes it easy or easier at least to get started with the data lake project. So lake formation, it's actually because there are a couple of things or concepts you need to have in place when you build a data lake. To name a few, of course, you need to have some sort of idea of which lake formation doesn't solve, but of course you need to have some sort of idea of what problem you are meant to solve. But that's not a really technical issue. But then you need to have, so to say, a way of ingesting the data. You need to have an ETL way of, need to have thoughts of how to, so to say, catalog the data, how to apply securities and things like that. And lake formation can actually shorten the amount of time you need to spend on those things. So that's really something I can recommend to use, lake formation. And then you can have a look at the quick starts. I think it's rather easy to find them, not search for AWS.
If you find it, if you share the link in the internal chat of the tool that we are using, I will paste it in the chat so people can go and check it out. Because I think those quick starts sometimes are not really used. They're quite interesting because you can basically deploy your whole application there from one click and get something to test. And many of those quick starts have the infrastructure as code that you can check it out. So I think it's really great. And one thing I would like to mention that it depends on what are your needs when building a data lake or a data analytics pipeline, because there is many tools that are very complex that you can use, but then there is other tools that if you put them together, you can get a pipeline super simple. Like you can use Kinesis Firehose to ingest all your events if you don't need a super real time and use S3 and Glue, and you start putting all these pieces together, and you can get a very scalable pipeline with using S3 as your data lake. So I don't think there is so many tools out there. But we have a little question, and I think this one is an interesting one. How you clean the data after sourcing? Does AWS provide some service?
Yes, I relate the question to the ETL process, so to extract, transfer, and load. And we have a service called AWS Glue that is, so to say, built for exactly that purpose. To add to that, also, of course, we want to provide choice at AWS. So we have a lot of partner solution that can be used in that field as well. A lot of partner specific solution that are, so to say, super good in many cases. But our own native service is called AWS Glue. So that's probably what you should have a look into. And you should probably also have to get an understanding of how it works. I think the Quickstarts actually can serve that purpose. So you know with the code examples and everything, how to build the service with it. Then of course, there's always the possibility to talk with people like myself and Marsha and your account team, of course, solution architects that can provide you with further guidance, of course, and partners, not only.
So he's going a little bit more in depth to the questions, like before Glue, he wants to clean the data, like remove comma and semicolons. But I think Glue will allow you to do all that type of things.
Absolutely, it will. But then, of course, there's specific tools that can be used as well. That sounds a very common problem if you're using Excel as an example. Work between CSV and so that's but that's definitely what you can use.
Yeah, but Glue also has the functionality, for example, to transform something, for example, from JSON to Parquet, and you don't need to write any code. It's just something you tell, hey, can you do this conversion? And it will do it for you. So maybe if you want to transform your data as well, Glue will help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he asks again the question, if we source the data in an Excel sheet, how Glue allows me to clean it? Yeah, you got into the Excel topic now.
If you have an Excel spread, you don't need Glue. I wouldn't say it's super simple, but you need to know a couple of features in Excel in order to transform it between. And that's a very common problem if you have like Excel spreadsheet in the if you have a US colleague as an example, and then you're using European, or in my case Swedish local, and it's but for that you don't need to have Glue. That's you can use it, but that's a little bit, I think, to be a little bit too ambitious.
And what you will use in order to do that type of transformation?
You
will do it
in Excel. Actually, you can
directly on Excel.
Yeah, I would do it, but it depends a little bit what the requirements are, of course.
Yeah, and also the type of, if you have multiple people like providing the information, maybe it's very hard to tell them that they need to, I don't know, have some common practices on exporting those documents. I don't know.
Yeah, but I guess what's behind that question, of course, it's not like a personal type of data solution. I guess it relates to building a solution for an enterprise. Then, of course, you need to have a more robust way, and then you probably need to have like Glue for that.
Yeah,
you can use absolutely Glue for that and automate it.
Yeah.
the
And you
measure.
can also use Lambda as well, but I think Glue is better, it's easier to use than I think it's a little bit overkill if it's just transformations that are doable with Glue to add a Lambda function in the middle. But that's something you can do when you're ingesting. If you're using Kinesis or something like that to ingest your data, you can always run a Lambda function or a server to do the cleanup, but depends on what you have to do. I think the scripts, the shops that Glue offer are very flexible. You can do quite a lot of things with that. But
Kinesis can also do some transformation before actually.
Yeah.
So there's many ways, but I would start looking at Glue.
Yeah, definitely. And it's super powerful, Glue. Now they launched Glue 2.0 that is even faster. So Codes is saying, thank you. It helps me a lot. Good. Yes. We have one question about RDS snapshots storage. Can you answer that type of questions? I don't know much about the storage of.
We can see what the question is.
It's a very long one. So it says, a backup question. Documentation on RDS snapshot states that we are only charged for incremental storage use. And also looking at snapshot times, it seems that only the delta incremental is actually backed up. In the case that information is deleted, entire rows, does the size of the backup decrease? Is there any easy way for us to go back and find out when the data was last populated? For example, the database has one row, and then you add one more row. Now it has two rows, and then you delete both rows. Is there not backup at this point, or is backing up to blank rows? I don't have a clue, because I don't use RDS.
And that's probably something we need to an essay.
Yeah. You can ping me the question if you want to my name in Twitter, and I can forward it to someone else. When you put the question in Twitter, please give me some email or something so I can forward the question and give some communication way for the person to reach out to you without me being in the middle. So feel free to send it there. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are almost on the hour. So if you have any last questions about storage, data lake, serverless, or something, just send it. We will be here until the hour. Again, we mentioned at the beginning of the series many events and places to get started with AWS. I would like to recap them a little bit before we go, so people have their screenshots taken. The first one is the webinar series that is going on. Starts tomorrow until the 8th of October. And these are free events. They're all online, so you can go and register. There will be many talks, and 2 of them will be about storage, which will be the talks.
Mm-hmm.
There is some managing files or something like that. What do you remember the talks that will be about storage in the Getting Started?
Getting started, yes. No, I don't. To be honest, I'm looking at. I don't remember them, but
okay. But people can go and check the link. I leave it in the chat as well, so you can register. Another event we have is the Dev Day. And that's a really cool event happening on the 15th of October. 3 tracks, one for IT managers, one for architects, and one for developers. And we will go really in depth in many services and usages of AWS. And we will be talking things like, for example, I will be showing how to build a CI/CD pipeline with serverless. There will be CDK talks, serverless talks, how to build workflows, how to build event-driven applications, all kind of things will be published there. There are 5 talks in each track, so there are 15 talks. It will be a really interesting online event. And all of these events also, besides being free, they have a QI moment, so you can always go and ask questions to the expert and get all your questions answered. And then we have the Data Modernization Week. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, we talked briefly about it in the beginning, but there's actually, as I said, there's two options of ways of engaging. One is looking at the webinars. There's like 6 specific webinars around storage. One is called Cloud Data Migration Best Practices. That's the first one. And then there's architecting a scalable, secure data lake storage infrastructure. That goes a little bit more into details on how to build a data lake, actually. And then a theme that has been common during this year when we have had the strange times we have, and it's how to optimize AWS Cloud Storage cost optimization best practices. And then there's also a session regarding backup and disaster recovery strategies with AWS. And then we have a session, FSX for Windows file server, save cost, enhance reliability by moving to managed. And then there's a EFS deep dive, modernize your application with container serverless and Amazon EFS. And that's if you're a developer, and that can be, and if you have a need to have persistent storage when building or using containers or maybe serverless like Lambda, then EFS could be a perfect solution. So that's 6 sessions, and then there's 3 workshops complementing those sessions if you want to get your hands dirty. And if you and that's data migration to AWS. That's a very popular, I believe. That's normally the session that is sold out the quickest, let's say. So that's very
Now it's an online thing. No sold out. No. There's space for everybody.
Yeah. So migrating data to AWS, securing data in Amazon S3, and managed file services with Amazon FSX or Windows File Server. If you want to, so to say, enroll yourself to them, then please, either get in contact with Marsha or myself. But you cannot enroll yourself, so to say, on the web directly. So you need to talk to someone at AWS.
Yeah. And one last question before we go, and then we will start wrapping out. The last question we are answering today is, what are the best practices to troubleshoot Lambda? So in a nutshell, I will tell you, use a structured login. For that, if you're using Python or Java or Node, you can use the Power Tools. You're coming from my YouTube, so go and check the last week video where we talk about the Power Tools. That will help you to make structured login. And then you can have X-ray, the tracing enable, and that will help you to have a way to see what is the end-to-end life of your events, how they're flowing, and that will help you to troubleshoot as well. And then when you have the structured login in place, you can use, for example, something like CloudWatch Insights or something like that to start querying the logs a little bit more in depth, so you can start finding the errors. If you want, you can, if you are not in trouble yet and you want to have a trouble shootable or something organized in place, please enable alarms. That will help you as well in order to know if there is any error happening. And now we have anomaly detection, so you have very smart alarms that are really understanding the flow of your application. So those, I will say, are my top tips to start troubleshoot Lambda applications instead of just printing console logs and trying to figure out what is going on. And with that question, we are on the hour. So thank you very much, Ulf, for answering our storage and data lake questions today. And next week, we are coming again with another guest. I don't know what we are talking about yet, but at least serverless always. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Bye.
So bye-bye.